Now, the Prime Minister and Chancellor are honing their five-point plan for tomorrow's autumn statement. But the pandemic is coming back to haunt Rishi Sunak.
The government's former chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance's diary entries have been full of bombshells. One extract seen by the COVID inquiry yesterday claimed that Dominic Cummings, yes him, said that Rishi Sunak thought the government should let people die of the virus.
Well, joining us now is former advisor to Boris Johnson, Alex Crowley. So your old boss has been under fire, but let's start with Rishi Sunak and the claims about eat out to help out. It actually caused a lot more damage than initially first thought.
Yes, it's a slightly odd one because it's a sort of second-hand account. You've got Vallance saying in his diary that somebody else said that Rishi Sunak said this. So it's a bit of an odd one. But there was criticism at the time that the Eat Out to Help Out scheme was contrary to the government's general scientific advice about everyone obviously trying to stay at home. But what this whole thing exposes is the really awful dilemma at the heart of government at the time, which was the scientific advice on the one side saying we've got to restrict the virus as much as possible, and the economic reality on the other hand, which we are all now living through the consequences of. The whole cost of living crisis we're living through at the moment is in large part due to the economic effect of the lockdowns. Ministers were having to deal with these dilemmas every single day, and obviously it was not an easy decision to make.
Alex, I have to say, and I think a lot of people will go, "Oh, he's just defending Boris." I'm not, but I thought the Vallance, he's no good at science, is a condescending jibe. I've said it all morning. If I was running a multi-million-pound organisation, billion-pound organisation, I'd surround myself with experts. I'd listen to them. The criticism of Boris is that he flip-flops. Yeah. Probably surprising. Probably his character, lots of people. But I said this at the time of COVID, and many people in this building disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. They all talk about masks and lockdowns and whatever. It's happened, and we need to learn from it.
Yes.
But I absolutely will maintain to the day I die that if your entire life is spent, I'm going to get the job. Boris Johnson was always destined to be Prime Minister of this country. And almost 3 months into your premiership, you get this choice, Alex Crowley. Yeah. And people, if you don't like this, sorry, but it's a fact. Lots of people can die or you can screw the British economy. It is not an easy decision. I'm not sticking up for Boris. Yeah. He made many, many mistakes. But I would say this. I suspect that any politician in that situation, I'm not talking about the party, would have also been slightly unsure of which way to go on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I think that, you know what the most amazing thing from this inquiry that has emerged so far, which I don't think has been reported nearly enough. It's not the texts, it's not the WhatsApps. It's this fact. The NHS were relying on fax machines to get data to number 10 Downing Street about what was happening in A&E units.
Good God.
Just consider that for a moment. They were relying on fax machines. So I would suggest that whoever was in charge when this horrible thing kicked off, whatever person, whatever party, would have been faced with a government system that simply wasn't up to the task. What the inquiry should be doing is saying, how do we need to change our structures of government so that whatever politician we all elect...
It never happens
again. It never happens again. And the blame game is all very well, OK? Mm-hmm. It's all great fun looking at what did so-and-so write in their diary and what choice language was used, and it's all great fodder, but it's not... We're not learning anything from it. That's the issue.
But, Alex, how long had the Tory party been in power when the pandemic hit?
Yeah, that's a fair point, right? OK, you could say that the Tories had been in a long time, hadn't changed these structures, and I think there's something to that. However, the idea that if Labour were in, none of this would have been a problem is nonsense, I would suggest, because those same structures, they would have faced them. They would have faced those same dilemmas that you mentioned.
And I might just make an analogy here, which is probably going to be met by complete confusion. But you look at what Starmer is doing very strongly over the Middle East. He was very quick out of the blocks, stronger than Sunak. Yeah. Claims and demands for a ceasefire have grown. Much of mutiny within his party. I would suggest whoever, not the Liberal Democrat, I'm just saying I think it was an impossible decision, an impossible position, rather, and it wasn't helped by his indecisiveness. And probably Boris Johnson's failing was to listen to too many people and try and please all the people all the time, and you end up hacking everybody off, right? That's what I would say.
Of course, look, my own experience with Boris was, and I saw this many times, he didn't like making unpopular decisions, right?
If you would sit in a room...
you
have to as a Prime Minister.
Well, exactly, and that was his great weakness as Prime Minister, is that Your job is literally the guy or the girl to come in and say, OK, everyone's arguing about this issue. It's very difficult. Now I have to make a decision. That's the job of Prime Minister. And a lot of people haven't been up to that task lately. And Boris's core weakness was he hated being unpopular. And he was probably, personality-wise, the last person you would want to put in that kind of a situation. But that's how it went.
And this is why I don't agree with people who say that, oh, this is all just gossip and tittle-tattle and we're just talking about personality types and making jokes rather than actually policy. OK, yes, policy is vitally important. We need to address how we look to that in the future. However, Boris Johnson was at the centre of this, and he was at the centre of the failings around the COVID crisis. And I think that what we do need to analyse as well is looking at how somebody like Boris Johnson could have become Prime Minister.
You know,
a man who was
Nicola,
not
there was
fit for the
an
job.
election.
To you.
Yes.
We could have had Jeremy Bleeding Corbyn in power if we hadn't had Boris Johnson. Can you just give
And
that
do you
a
know what
moment's
his
thought?
policies are on?
Wow.
Do you know what his policies are on letting people die or protecting the
Can you
economy?
imagine Jeremy Corbyn with a choice on a Tuesday morning? You're either going to screw the British economy or let people die. I'm not sticking up
He's
for
a
Boris
very-
Johnson. I think he's flawed, OK? And I agree with Alex and I agree with you, probably the wrong person at the wrong time. But I think what I want is I want that to never happen again, as Mike Buckley said.
Yes, and both of those options are very, very populist. I would say that Jeremy Corbyn is a lot more principled on certain things than
He
Boris
doesn't know what a
Johnson.
terrorist group is.
Than Boris Johnson. However, I do think it is important. I know you were saying, like, this man won a general election. I know, but we need to look at why somebody like that won a general election based on how people felt about him as a person rather than his ability to lead people through a crisis.
But that's how people vote, Nicola. That's how people vote.
Yes, which is why we need to look at this.
You can't say that... But you can't blame the electorate.
Then we need to start then the electorate, myself included, need to go, oh, let's not choose someone who we think we could be mates with. Let's choose someone who we think is a good leader.
But you know what's really interesting? And this is it's spread out from what we were going to talk about. And our job is, because we have opinions, right? I go back to the Starmer thing. Starmer, is he right now showing a statesman-like ability over the Middle East to prove to the British people that he's got what it takes to be the British Prime Minister?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's alienating half his party. I suspect being in politics, it has become more presidential, and it is about the look and what's said. Fundamentally, Boris Johnson didn't get it right. I am simply saying, find me a politician in that instance that would have got it right. Maybe not would have partied, I get that. I just, for the victims, don't want this to happen again. And I don't want to read every day, he said this, he said that, Dominic Cummings, Dominic whatever, not interested. How are we going to avoid this in the future? Isn't that the answer there?
Yeah, but my point is we voted in somebody to lead the country who thought it was more important to have drinks and alcohol and parties than stick to his own rules.
Listen, but I think there's more important... But I get what Nick's saying, right?
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely. And I'll tell you what, another thing that Vallance said yesterday, which we should just reflect on, was that Dominic Cummings did break the rules over his Barnard Castle thing. He wrote that in his diaries. And so let's just remind ourselves
As did that other... What about... Who was that scientific advisor who disappeared off to see his bird in Wales? What was his name?
Neil...
Ferguson.
Neil Ferguson, that was
I mean, I'm not being rude. I would suspect, and this is where, like, Julie Hartley-Brewer and I had a stand-up row about this. I would say to anybody in the United Kingdom, oh, he didn't have a drink. I bet loads of you broke the rules. I certainly walk for more than an hour a day. I understand, though, if you are running this country and if you are setting the rules, it is no good. But we didn't start the conversation. Partygate will never defend. No. But this, I felt like he was in... Probably was out of his depth. I think anybody would have been. Would you have been out of your depth? Because I would have been.
Obviously, yes. I mean, yeah, these are the kind of theoretical exercises that ministers are sometimes asked to do as a kind of worst-case impossible scenario, and they always get them wrong because they're impossible, but it actually happened for real this time.
Yeah. Alex, you're always welcome here, mate. Great to have you on. Thank you very, very much indeed.